part of a meeting for people to attend. So welcome everyone. And we will call to order this regular council meeting of Monday, July 23rd, and we are at the hearing portion of our meeting. So I do have a few things, just a statement to read, and then we'll be hearing from the CAO for the motion, and then from Development Services, and then I will be calling for some input from the people in the gallery. So I'd like to open up the hearing for variance permit 478 and variance permit 480. Following the reading of the motion by the CAO, I will request the Development and Planning Officer to explain the development. I will then ask 3 times for submissions from the gallery, giving the opportunity for the applicant and the public to speak. Council will also have the opportunity to ask questions, and once this is complete, I will close the hearing and Council will vote on the motion. Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 19.1 is variance permit 478 for the property at 1400 20th Street Northeast. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that VP 478 be authorized for issuance for Lot A, Plan 27915, to vary zoning bylaw 2303 as follows. Increase the maximum permitted combined height of a retaining wall on fence from 1.2 to 2.9 meters.
Okay. Development Services.
Thanks, Your Worship. This proposal is a replacement for an existing retaining wall at the northwest corner of the subject parcel, adjacent to 20th Street and the 15th Avenue intersection. The wall is to be relocated onto private property. As the proposal is on exterior parcel lines adjacent to an intersection, staff view related impacts as minimal, and staff have no related sightline concerns. The proposal is supported by staff, and a representative of the applicant is in attendance.
Okay. Would the representative for the applicant like to say anything? Asking you first. If you wish to speak, just come in. Oh, sure. Come up front. Give us your name and residential address.
Mayor, councillors, and city staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Elise Menard-Jonker. I'm a landscape architect with LA West Associates, which is based in Kamloops, BC. Myself, I'm a resident of Notch Hill in Sorrento. We are the client of the LDS Church, and I am the sole representative of the LDS Church tonight. And the proposal is to, as stated, move the existing retaining wall, which is somewhat compromised and failing, back onto private property as one single retaining wall with the added feature of a chain link fence along the top for safety. And unless there's any questions, that's basically.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you.
So calling for a second time for submissions. Did anyone wish to speak to this? Calling for a third time for submissions. Did we have any written submissions?
Not for this application, Your Worship.
Okay. Do we have any questions for staff? I will close this public hearing. Do we, council, wish to make any comments? Okay. Seeing none, then I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Administrator?
Your Worship, item 19.2 is variance permit 480 for the property at 1111 19th Avenue Southeast. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that VP 480 be authorized for issuance for Lot 6, Plan EPP 56083, to vary zoning bylaw 2303 as follows. Increase the maximum permitted combined height of a fence in conjunction with the retaining wall from 2 to 6 meters.
Okay. Development Services?
Your Worship, the subject property is an undeveloped parcel in the Byers View development. Staff did have initial concerns related to this request, as the request is relatively large in the context of the regulations. However, staff recognize that the site is significantly sloping. The proposed house is of similar size to the other homes on the street, And staff note that there is some common desire for level yards. A key factor for staff is that the wall is proposed to be set back from the rear parcel line. This lessens visual impact, allows for landscaping, and provides maintenance access. So based on these considerations, the proposal is supported by staff. The applicants provided 2 letters of support from adjacent landowners, as well as further elevations of the proposal and images showing the intended style of block for the wall.
So calling for a first time for submissions, would the applicant like to speak? And welcome to council, Mr. Himbo.
Hello, everybody.
Would you like-
Don Hinbo from Hinbo Construction Group.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
working for the pop-offs, trying to get a bit of a backyard for them. So we proposed it's engineered at a 16-foot high wall. In reality, it's probably about 14 feet once we backfill the front side. The only side we can't backfill is on the left side of that picture, where there's a city-owned storm drainage that we can't raise the grade up on. So it's engineered for 16 feet. The way it's put forward, it's higher than that because they add the railing on
Because of
top.
the railing.
Yeah. So that's the proposal we had. The owners agreed to put plantings and whatever in front to do whatever to minimize the view. It's a verti-block wall, so it's not something ugly like a gabion basket or something. You know, it's a good looking wall. You got some pictures of that, Chris, I think. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Similar, that's a brown color, ours are gray.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, it's properly engineered and designed. Shouldn't be any issues.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? I don't see any at this, oh, sorry. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, and thank you, Don, for coming to speak to us. I had a question. One of the pieces of correspondence we received mentions that you had some guidelines and bylaws within your building code, and the city doesn't enforce those. That's not up to the city. That's internal.
Right, it's up to us.
Yeah, so my question is, does this contravene, or are you wanting it to contravene because of the land and the slope and all of those things? Because honestly, to me, it didn't mean a lot, because that's not us enforcing that. But I do want to understand what was in the design code or building code.
Yeah, originally in our original proposal, when we did the subdivision, we were thinking of doing a common retaining wall the whole length, but the cost was just prohibitive.
So instead of that, you're allowing people to do what they want to do,
Yeah.
and therefore this.
And this will be the worst lot. From there on up, the grade goes up, so.
So this is the
Once
most.
we're across the drainage area there, the city drainage,
Yeah,
the guy next door, he's actually a landscape architect from Calgary. He'll probably do similar.
that's
And then-
1121.
Yeah, 1221 or 1121, yeah.
Okay. And then my other question was 1040. Has that sold yet?
No.
And will those people be very aware of the retaining wall if we approve it in their backyard?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There, be visible. Hopefully we sell it sooner.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any further questions? Okay, go ahead and have a seat, and thank you.
thanks.
So calling for a second time for submissions. Did anyone wish to come forward and speak? Yes, please, come forward. And just give us your name and residential address.
Harry Fisher. My wife and I, we live at lot 1061, and we've submitted this morning, and I'm hoping everybody got to have a look at it, some photographs that were taken from our line of sight from where this wall's going to be. I don't know if people have seen that. The issue that we have, of course, is when we purchased the lot that we have, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
When we purchased the lot that we have, we purchased the one we bought based on the rules of the subdivision. So we bought a bigger lot, planning to have a flatter area with an unobstructed view, and as promised, a sort of a rolling kind of hillside type effect. It seems to me that what we're going to end up with now is, if you look from our perspective, looking to the east, what we're going to see is a flat concrete or brick, whatever type wall, extending far past our neighbor's house and right in our line of sight from wherever we go in the lot. Like, where our lot goes from our end of our patio, roughly goes 75 feet deep. Well, that's our yard. That's where we're going to be. And so when we want to look to our right, instead of looking at what we originally thought was going to be here when we purchased our lot, which was like you build out as far as you can, and then it slopes down on a natural. And from the developer, part of their regulations is that whatever's built there has to follow the natural scale of the land, and you end up with that. Now we're ending up with a neighbor beside us which has a lot similar to ours. It stops at a similar thing, and then the next lot juts out, whatever the distance is, I'm not quite sure, with a large retaining wall and a flat area. Where when we purchased our lot, we did our due diligence. Could have chosen at that time, I think pretty much any one of those lots were available to us. So we did our due diligence and thought, okay, we want to have a lot, we want to have a flat area, we want to have a swimming pool, and I read the regulations, what it was developed for, and made our decision to buy that lot based on what the developer said were the regulations. So now it seems to me that because the developer wants to build something else, they can change the regulations. And that doesn't seem like a fair playing field, because otherwise I could have bought that lot and applied for a variance and saved thousands of dollars in retaining walls and cost of driveways and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, we're going to end up staring at a wall, whether it's brick or whether it's concrete. To me, it's kind of irrelevant, because we bought our lot based on, we're going to look at what we see now. And I sent some pictures in this morning of what we do see now versus what we're going to see. I don't know if you have them or... Yeah. So instead of looking at the lowered, rolling hills or whatever, we're now going to be staring at virtually every angle from our backyard, including our patio. We're going to be staring at a big flat wall jutting out in what would have been normally just either a step down or grassy area, or of whatever landscaping they want to put in is not an issue. That's the issue for me, is our view has changed, and we purchased our lot based on what we were told were the rules of the subdivision. So that's basically my concern.
So thank
Our
you.
concern.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Eliason?
Yeah, thanks. Did you guys require any variances to build your house?
Actually, I did apply for variance. And the reason I was applying for variance because our height of our house, the roof, was going to be a little bit taller. And I was told that the council doesn't look at variances for height. Height, from the total height of the back of the house to the top of the house, our roof had a higher pitch. So I didn't apply for variance. What I did is I changed the design to follow the rules.
Okay.
Right? That's what I did. The rules were set forth by the city and set forth by the builders. So what we did was we'll follow them. Okay. So we didn't apply for variance.
And it looks like the neighbor directly beside you is going to build a retaining wall as well. Is that?
They are going to build a retaining wall, but it's going to be a step down retaining wall, okay. Right? The way it's supposed to be, not a jutting out. I wish if you look at the pictures of what you see where the lots are, and if you look at the pictures I've submitted, our house, the neighbor's house is slightly forward of ours, because the designer that we hired also designed their house, right? And it was designed with that intent, is that our patio is not going to interfere with their patio and vice versa. So that house was pushed forward. We had our designer make our house fit on the lot without trying to cause as little amount of, back and forth viewing. So now with the house next to that one, what we would have seen would have been either a step down retaining wall and gradually go down, which was the intent of it. Now what we're going to see is, for lack of better terms, a bit of a landing strip, right? and that wasn't what when we designed our house, we designed it based on the rules that were presented to us, right?
Yeah, thank you for your answers.
Hopefully that was clear enough.
That's good, thank you.
Sorry, a little nervous. I'm a public speaker.
You're doing great, you're doing great. It is, I know it's hard to be standing there and addressing us, so
Yeah.
you're doing great. Councillor Flynn? you have
Well, I
something?
just want, so just so I'm clear, these are the things you dropped off?
Those are photos that I'd
Yellow.
taken and dropped off, and,
Okay.
and based on the photos, you can see that.
No,
from-
I wasn't sure which ones you brought,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got that, yeah.
That,
So then
that's
my,
basically what we're looking at facing, I guess it would be east.
good, so this question may end up coming to you, but does staff have these on their screen? Ones that were dropped off as well, conceptual drawings that were late as well? Okay, so I guess what I want to ask you
Yeah,
is, honestly, if yours is the one on the furthest right, and I might be making a comment more than asking you, and I'm on your front lawn way down, leave it there. So if you move the arrow down to the empty space on that front lawn, is that where you're planning to put your pool?
no, I already have a pool.
You already have a
The
pool?
pool is behind, closer to the house,
Okay,
right? And that's the
so-
reason that we chose
Okay,
that.
no,
Oh, sorry.
no, that's fine. So I thought you meant down there, but what I'm trying to figure out, I'm sorry, and hopefully you can help me here, but I don't see the retaining wall that's being applied for the higher variance as the issue. I see the retaining wall that you say is stepped down in your neighbor's. Now, is that an accurate reflection of the neighbor's retaining wall? So that's,
I don't know that answer to that question.
because to me, if that retaining wall is within guidelines and that's your next door neighbor's retaining wall, this one we're talking about is a non-issue, personally. That's my belief. But anyway, I'll save my comments for later. I'm just confused as to how,
I think what you're misunderstanding is that where that retaining wall is drawn in the picture?
Right.
The retaining wall that I have there, that's buried, right? That's covered in dirt. It's a roll, it comes down, it's a 2 to 1
no, but
slope.
I understand that. I'm talking about the visual. If this is accurate, the far retaining wall in the property in question isn't any higher than the retaining wall beside you, the way I'm seeing this. And I may be misunderstanding it, but that's
Well,
why.
yes, it is, because if I was standing, say where that mock fence is, I'm standing up there, and if I'm looking to the east, the first retaining wall that stepped down, I'm not gonna see that retaining wall. That's gonna be buried in natural soil on the left side. The further one, the second one over, that retaining wall is going out further, right? It's going out further, so our visual will be that wall. And you can see it in the picture. Those pictures are a little bit, I hate to use the word deceptive, but in
Yeah.
reality.
I find them helpful, but maybe they're not.
But I mean, I don't mean to call them, I don't use that terminology, but it's a little bit skewed because when you look at the photographs you're seeing here, you're looking at photographs from our patio. Our lot is more than just a patio. It's 75 feet deeper than that.
No.
So what happens is when I walk 10 feet off our patio, what am I looking at, right? Unless I'm confined to that space of a lot that's the depth that it is, right?
Okay, I think my questions are probably for somebody else with regards to these renderings.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Jameson?
Thanks, Your Worship. And Councillor Flynn kind of raised the same issues and the same kind of points of discussion. I was wondering if Mr. Fisher had actually seen the conceptual views.
Yeah, I've saw them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this probably isn't the venue for you to have the discussion with Mr. Hinbo, but maybe if it's after you're finished your presentation and any questions, and maybe Mr. Hinbo would come back and speak to these drawings then.
Yep.
Okay, because
sure.
his preamble told us really what we already knew. Okay, so if you don't mind, Dawn, if you could come back after Mr. Fisher's done, I think maybe we could discuss these conceptual views.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any further questions for Mr. Fisher? Okay, hearing none, so go ahead and have a seat, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So calling again for submissions.
Hi, my name is Betty Turco. I live at 1221 19th Avenue Southeast. My address is off the map for the location. We're the last house in the Richmond Heights division. I'm here and I made a submission to, in written, actually my husband did, put together documentation, and the reason I'm here as a concern is that should council pass this retaining wall, there's likelihood that that could continue on right to the house next to us and therefore would affect us as well. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things that we made in our written submission and talking about when we purchased our property in 2009 and decided to do our retaining walls. We didn't build until 2013 and spent 3 or 4 years actually doing our retaining walls, and were relegated, as indicated by our documentation by Kevin Pearson, and exactly what we could and couldn't do. And that is why we chose to do the terraced walls. We did it for a couple of reasons. We did it for aesthetics for the neighbors down below us, and we did it because it just made more sense and in terms of what we wanted to do in our home. We too have a pool in our backyard, and we also understand and respect the fact that that hillside is quite steep, and know that most everybody on that side of the road is going to have to do some form of retaining wall. But again, my concern is that the height of that retaining wall at 1111 could therefore be followed through to the Alto 1181, which I know she's planning to build sometime this year as well, and that is a concern for us in terms of sightline and aesthetics.
So your concern is that 1121, 1141, 1161, 1171, and 1181 will all have those kind of...
Well, we'd be looking to do that sort of variance. It's not the wall itself, it's merely the height of the wall that's a concern.
Okay. So I have some questions. Councillor Lyson?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your presentation, your submission. It's very detailed. So you were able to do and build a pool with the double terrace. Your neighbor has a wall that is similar to this on the east side. Is that an issue for you as well?
In terms of what it was, yes, it was at the time, and we had issues with it at the time and presented to council as well. Partly because of when we decided to do gable basket, some of it was we had to have it engineered, and to our understanding, our neighbor to the east of us did not, and went with the concrete blocks. If you guys went on a site visit, as you previously indicated, you might have seen them there.
Yeah, I did. I mean, and I hear what you guys are saying, but you guys have some of the best views in town. Absolutely. And if it was me, I'd be trying to look straight out that way rather than at my neighbor's yards, but I live downtown, so I only have views of Mount Ida. So your concern essentially is how those retaining walls are built and where they're built, and the height variances on the build. Okay. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the...
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, you could say, why am I concerned? Because you're right. When I sit in my backyard, that's where I'm looking as out to the bay, right? But I am considering the people down below. I mean, we considered that when we purchased the lot, when we built our stuff on the lot, and that's kind of what we're looking at. I'm looking at the neighborhood as a whole, as I think I may have mentioned to some of you. When you come into town from the west, I mean, that subdivision is wide open. I mean, you see that subdivision as you come into town. It's not like, I know there's retaining walls elsewhere in town that are maybe of this height or close to, but they're not as visible as this subdivision is at this point.
Okay, do you think that the buyers down below on the lower levels, the 1010 to 1080, that subdivision portion, are going to plant things to not want people to look into their backyards and hide those retaining walls? And
I'm not sure how you could, in terms of looking at the back. It depends on how far you build, I guess.
Seems to have.
Actually, you guys, please, actually go through the mayor.
Oh, sorry.
This isn't a back and forth conversation. There's a very formal process, so.
Yeah, they're pretty tough lots to build on, and so I just wanted to, there are landscaping options that you can use. So thank you.
And anything further?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So does anyone else have something they'd like to say? I'm sorry, there is one more. Councillor Harrison, just a second.
Hi, thanks Betty for coming and talking to us. I'm just wondering if staff can bring up Appendix 1, just so that Betty can point out her house, because I just want to make sure I know exactly where it is. I think is that it? That one right there? Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, calling again for a submission. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? Please come forward. This is your opportunity.
Again, I would like to come back up, can I?
Yes.
I just wanted to be clear on the motive for this. What we're asking for is that I understand that somebody wants a bigger, flatter lot, but the rules should adhere to everybody. I followed the rules, right? We chose the lot based on all the information that we have today. We had that information when we bought the lot. So we purchased that lot knowing that we're gonna be looking straight out to the left, to the east. We're gonna look over a house, there's a house below us, and again, either a step down or sloping hillside, not 20 foot or whatever many feet it is retaining wall. It's our visual from the right. I think I would just want everybody to understand that if I'm standing looking to the east, that's what we're looking at. Right now in that visual drawing of the neighbor's retaining wall that steps down, well, that's the same level as our lot. That's covered in dirt. The wall that's going to be put up in 2 houses down isn't covered in dirt. It's not going to look like that. The one beside us will blend right into the natural landscape. I just want to reiterate that so people understand that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
No, thank you.
So, did anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Jameson?
Thanks, Your Worship. This is really the only time that we could discuss this with Mr. Hinbo then. If we could ask him to come back and maybe speak to those conceptual views.
I was going to do
Okay.
that once
I
he's
appreciate that, thanks.
checking that if anyone else had anything to say.
Thanks.
But yes. Now just, and then don't let me forget, we need to talk about submissions too.
Yeah,
So your
Harry's,
question for Mr. Himbo is?
Well, I had a couple, Don. So, because you're really familiar with this whole neighborhood and this whole development, so as we travel east from this lot or these 3 lots, and we travel east, in your opinion, it's the retaining walls will be smaller, and actually there might even be lots that won't require them. And I think you made that comment.
You can see on this map here the topography, see how the grade lines are?
Yeah.
This is the worst lot. 1181, we're doing that house too, and we've got concepts coming for that, and there's nothing over 4 feet right now for retaining walls. Because the grades there are way flatter. So I guess, yes, we're on we're the worst piece of ground now, heading east, and it'll get better.
In your opinion, then, there'll be lessen the need for retaining walls heading east, and in some cases, there may not even be a retaining wall. But that, again, that's up to the buyer, and then what he or she or they want.
Right, like we're working with 1171 and 1181, and they're both going to have some walls, but they'll be designed together, and they'll probably fit within the normal parameters.
And the conceptual views that we received, how long have they been available to neighbors and to staff?
Just this week, we got Kelly Meyer, the designer, that designed Harry's house, the Westlands, and the Pop-Offs.
Okay.
He was on holiday, so his son Nathan put them together for us.
And so the middle house on, if we can go to this one, Chris. One more, I think, going up. Yeah, that one. So Don, in your opinion then, that's not an accurate?
That is not accurate on, like towards Harry and Ellen's, that wall is not accurate.
Okay.
It'll be terraced. See how there's 2 terraces on the back side there?
Okay.
That terrace will return around.
Oh, I see.
But he had a hard time, like with the programs, they can't.
It can't come out exactly.
And we weren't that concerned with that because we were trying to get, like he designed all the homes, he did all the layouts, all the elevations on everything. So he's able to get you a pretty good eyes view from the Fishers.
So most, if not all of that, sorry, go ahead. So
like from the Fishers decks, he has some views of what the views would be of the 1111 retaining wall.
So that,
which are not exactly accurate, like it, you know, that wall that we're looking at there with those 3 little shrubs is likely going to be about 4 or 5 feet high there. It only shows it about 3 there.
okay, that helps me. Like I just wanted to.
But that is the vision right there.
And I understand that the program is not going to give us exactly what it's going to look like. There's going to be all sorts of things that are going to happen along the way.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you speaking to these.
But Harry is right, it's not 100% accurate what we're looking at there.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Harrison, you wanted to speak to him? So we have some more questions here from Councillor Harrison and a couple of the others. Mr. Himbo?
Thanks, Don. So 1181 and 1171, there won't be any variance application for retaining walls on those lots?
Not at this point, we're still working with landscape architects on 1181.
Okay.
And what they do will kind of set the pace for 1171.
All right, and that's Ms. Turco's concern because, of course, she's the neighbor beside.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why she's here. All right, so there's not a guarantee that there won't be a variance application there.
No, I have no idea right at this point. But right now with the concepts we have, no.
Okay. Is the retaining wall on the one that we're looking at now, is it in any way connected with whether there would be a variance on 1181?
I don't follow you.
Sorry, it wasn't a very good question. Let me try it again. Okay, if there was no variance on 1111, would that guarantee no variance on 1181? Like, are they connected? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
No, I don't think they're connected, no.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Councillor Flynn?
I think my question has been answered. So unless I remember what it was, if it wasn't answered, I am good.
Okay. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cooper, and thanks, Don. Could you comment a little bit on Mr. Fisher referred in terms of citing requirements, referred to it as regulations, certainly in his presentation, and I'm assuming perspective as well. And in terms of general criteria, there seems to be a difference, at least in perception, as to the lots. So are you...
Every lot's going to be different. I mean, there's no general way to do it. All we wanted to as developers was keep a similar flow of what the looks would be. So we wanted to minimize it, but we still have to be able to work with the people and have backyards.
So from your perspective, there were no indications or perceptual discussion that lots would not follow the natural slope of the land?
Well, I don't think anybody anticipated following the natural slope. Nobody would.
Well, to some degree. I mean, I understand there's split things, but so you would disagree with the perspective that Mr. Fisher put about his understanding of what he presented as perceived regulations?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn, you had another question?
I knew I would remember if I waited long enough, and I'm not sure if this is for Don or for staff, but back to the second conceptual drawing. Yeah, that one. Somebody had mentioned that on the left of this, that is that a right-of-way?
That's correct.
So that's a city protected right-of-way, so there won't be landscaping there, but there could be landscaping down below. And then just, do we know if that fence, is that gonna be glass?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That answers.
Now, there's part of the confusion. The way it was wrote was it was a 20-foot high wall, not a 16, because the railing was added on.
Because of the railing at 4 feet, but it is gonna be glassed, which, okay. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. Himbo? Hearing none. Okay, so thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. So does anyone else have anything they want to say? I want to give it.
I'd like to come back up again, please. Could I?
Certainly.
I'd like to refer everyone to when we're talking, the last question was, I submitted a document with citing requirements this morning. I don't know if anybody had a chance to read that. As far as the question was asked, whether it was natural views, so on and so forth. And if we just take a moment just to read those citing things, I think you'll see that what I had stated earlier is an actual fact.
Thank you. I see these are buyer's view design guidelines.
I know, but that was the question I was just asked.
Yeah.
If my perception was different than what was offered when we bought. That was the last question that Mr.
Yes.
Himbo was asked, right?
Thank you. Yes, I do.
No.
I
So
heard that.
just to be aware that it is not my perception, it's actual. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to review this submissions? Yeah, please.
Okay, so there was a number of, there's a
sorry.
number of written submissions. The first one is from Billie Jean and Trevor Metz, who live at 1110, which basically is to the south of this lot. And I think it's worth reading because I think we can get an answer from staff perhaps. And what they ask is, I understand the application is to raise the fence and retaining wall system in order to gain a more level lot. I just want to ensure that city ensures that the home being built will not be able to build taller than what the intended dwellings were to be on those front lots. So, just through you to the planning department, the retaining wall with the raised glass fence in the front does not change the actual height of the house in any way.
Through your worship, that's correct, it does not.
Okay, I believe that will answer that question. A number of other letters. Jamie Franklin from Byers View. Byers View understands and approves of Himbo Construction Group and Company going ahead with the design and build of proposed retaining wall at the above location. And we have the letter from Ellen and Harry, and I think it was well explained by Mr. Fisher, along with the photos and also the siting requirements for Byers View design guidelines. And I know all of council have that. We have a letter from Lynn and Marv Westland, and they live at 1181, which is a lot, I think, beside the Turco residence. We understand and approve of Himbo Construction and Company going ahead with the design and build of proposed retaining wall at the above location. We have the letter from Dwayne and Betty Turco, both a covering letter that they sent to Harry and Ellen, and also their letter covers the points that Betty covered when she presented to us. And then, of course, the guidelines or the conceptual views that came late to council that Councillor Jameson was asking Dawn about.
Okay,
those are the written submissions.
Thank you. I just have one question. The Byers View design guidelines, those aren't city regulations.
Your worship, that's correct, they are not.
Okay. Do we have any further questions from council? Okay, so then I will close this public hearing, and then you can make your comments. So I declare this public hearing closed. So here's your chance for comments, and then I will call the question. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. I understand there's also plans for a swimming pool on this property, and my question through you to staff is, could a swimming pool be built if this isn't approved? That's a tough question. I mean, the part of the variance is the necessity of the flatness for a swimming pool. Am I understanding that right?
I believe so. I'm not certain if you move the flat area on this parcel to it, if you shift it one way or the other on the lot, due to the slope of this lot, I would be doubtful that you could somehow avoid a variance application in some form or other.
All right, thanks. That was a tough question, but appreciate it. So it's part aesthetic, part practical, and part geotechnical. All right, thank you.
Councillor Flynn?
Okay, I thought Councillor Wells-Richmond was going to make comments, but she's going to let me go first. Okay, so thank you everybody for your submissions. I have to say that I find it very interesting that we received about 3 or 4 letters against. I think most of them have been addressed. I understand the Turco's concern that it could be a wall of retaining walls moving down, but I think the fact is this looks to be the toughest and most difficult lot to build on. I understand the siting criteria. We don't enforce that. I think you could argue that what they're building is not negative in any way, shape, or form based on the siting criteria. But I think it's important to note, and I have probably the second best view in town on my street. And some of that view has retaining walls, swimming pools beside me. It's got, when I look east or west, I do look in people's backyard, but when I look at the lake, I look at the lake. I have to say, those photos with the circle, that's a real stretch to me that that's much of a negative. But I do want to say it's not our job here to protect viewscapes. And I don't think that's what this says either, the sighting, by the way, but we don't enforce that. If we were here to protect viewscapes, this subdivision wouldn't exist, because there's people that have been there 20, 30, 40 years that have lost their views of the lake because of the subdivision. So it's not our job to protect viewscapes, but it is our job to look at variances, which every homeowner can apply for, and look at all the facts. And I think staff's report clearly states that the size of this variance was a concern at first. And the size of the variance is a concern still, but I think realistically, the only person that could really complain about the variance is the one that might buy 1040 in the future, and they will probably plant shrubs, as Councillor Eliason said. So everybody has a right to apply for variances. In this case, I think this variance makes sense. It's not our job to protect viewscapes, so I will vote in support. I have to admit I'm struggling visually to figure out the actual impact from the diagrams, and I'm not good at visualizing. So I personally think this, because it's not raising the height of the house to the people across the road, which wouldn't agree with any of this, I don't see this as an issue, and I will vote in support.
Okay, thank you. Do you have comments from any other council members? Councillor Jameson?
Thanks, Your Worship, and I'll try to keep them as brief as possible. There's really only a couple of points I want to make, and first, it's a thank you for coming, for everybody, and explaining and helping us better understand like a complex lot and a complex subdivision in some parts. So thanks for your presentations. Councillor Flynn's already touched on it, and it's a tough thing to say and a tough thing to accept sometimes, that nobody owns a view, although many people pay for one. And I know that's kind of a harsh statement. However, there's the view's there. The view's there for the enjoyment of everybody. And if you buy a lot that has a view, then you are buying the ability to have that view until someone else impedes it, I guess, or tries to. And I think it must be said too that there were homes across from this road that once had a view that don't anymore. And so I think that should be considered. I'm going to support this application. I think the work that's been done in this subdivision is quality work so far. Mr. Hiddenboe is the author of the guidelines that we kind of looked over today, so I think his interpretation, to me, does hold some merit. And I think that he will work within those guidelines the best that he can. And I'm sure hoping, and I'm confident that he will, that he'll discuss the project as it goes along with the neighbors, and to try to do the best work that he can to make sure that those views are protected. So I will support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Cooper. I will be voting against this application. Each application is unique, but I do think that there's a need for consistency of approach. And I don't come at it from the viewscape of being the view of the lake. I view it as being sort of the environment around. We did have something similar near Willow Cove a while ago, and I guess I put my weight in the nearby existing owners and with their perceptions. So I agree with the rationale as presented by the nearby neighbors. I don't believe this is a small difference, not to the lake view, but to the viewscape of the ground. And I think it is it's an excessive, in my view, it's an excessive height variance request. I think Plan Bs are always available. This does not speak to the quality work that the developer does and is capable of doing on another option. I think that there are likely other options available, and I put my weight on the rationale of the nearby neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, I want to say thanks everyone for your presentations. And I very much appreciate the point that the Fishers have made here tonight and the thoughtful decision they made when they selected their lots. But your neighbor selected lots too. And it seems to me, I live in Canoe, we can't have swimming pools, and we don't really have a view unless we go down to the wharf. But you all have in common that you have beautiful hillside homes with swimming pools and incredible views. And so in some ways you all want the same thing. Now, it would be precedent setting for me to make a decision about one homeowner's wishes versus another homeowner's view. So for that reason, I am going to support this variance, although I think it needs to be said that this is likely the finest subdivision in the city. And you owe it to each other to work some of this stuff out. So I'm not very happy about being put in this position, but I do have to follow a set of standards whereby my job is not to protect other people's views.
Thank you. Councillor Eliason.
So I'd like to thank everyone for your presentations tonight, and thank the young guys for showing up. You brought the median age of this room down significantly, so that's it's always great to see. Change isn't easy. You know what? We at this council table, we made tough decisions to allow these lots to actually come about, and people weren't happy about it. So we made those decisions here when people are saying, no, you shouldn't do that, no, you can't develop that, no, you can't do this. And so if we didn't make those tough decisions, your lots wouldn't exist and you wouldn't be able to live where you live. So no matter what we do up here, people are mad at us and disagree with us, and we try and make it so people can live in Salmon Arm. So I understand your frustration, but there's been frustration before you, and there will be frustration after you. And so that's just the weight that we get to carry on our shoulders. When we approved this subdivision, we knew it wasn't going to be easy. We expected variances, we expected retaining walls, and it's hard not to imagine hillside development in this community that we have, which is built on hills, not to have variances, not to have retaining walls, and not to have height variances, all of those things. My thoughts is that the lower lots below you are going to landscape, and they're probably going to terrace their backyards, and they're going to do that. They may build retaining walls, they may not require variances, but having walked that property extensively over the weekend and having looked in backyards and talked to landscape architects and talked to people working up there and talked to people developing up there, I know that this is a reality, and I know that people will plant trees, they will plant shrubs, they will plant hedges, they will make it flat so they can sit up in their backyard and maybe get a view of the lake above their houses, or maybe just for privacy for the people looking over them. But for me, the question is, does the height of this retaining wall make sense for the purpose of allowing these people to have a pool on a challenging piece of dirt like their neighbors have pools? And to me, this height variance makes sense for that to happen. And so I will vote to support this height variance. And I think that the developer will do a good job in making sure that the impact of this retaining wall is minimal with the shrubs below it, the materials that will be used on both the lots below it, which is 1040, 1060, 1020, but also on the neighbors. So I will support it, and thank everyone again for the presentations.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to everyone who came and spoke to us. It seemed like there was a few different issues depending on where you lived, and so I appreciate the Turco's concern about retaining wall variance here possibly carrying across and influencing where they live. So in asking the question, it appears that that's not the case, that while there's no guarantee 1181, 1171 won't require a variance, it seems unlikely, and it's unrelated to what we do on this particular lot. So I think that's important information for those at that end of the subdivision. It was interesting to me that the people who live closest to the lot with the variance did not register any concern. 1081, 1121, 1060, 1020, 1040. I know not all those are sold, but there is some ownership in them, even if they're not sold, by the people who are developing the subdivision. And those 5, if anyone's going to be influenced, would be influenced the greatest. And I can only assume, because there's not input from them, that they are okay with the variance as requested. For the Fishers at 1061, I visited a number of times, didn't go onto your house, but did visit the lots there, and it's spectacular. The view you've got there is just spectacular. It's amazing. I live in the Sunset Ridge subdivision, which was probably buyer's view about 25 years ago. It was kind of the buyer's view of before on Okanagan. And that subdivision really stood out, like Betty had described, across the town. And there was a lot of concern about it. There were some variances given there too because of the hillside. If you go to that subdivision now where I live, you would not be able to tell which houses had subdivision or had variances on their retaining walls or on their sides of their lots, because, and it also doesn't show up at all when you come into town, whereas it once was deemed as being a scar upon the city because of the growth that's happened there. And I suspect that's going to be the case here. Maybe not tomorrow or 1 or 2 years down the road, but 5 years down the road for sure. While I hear the Fishers' concern about the impact that this retaining wall might have in their view, just looking at the pictures, even the pictures that you provided to us, I do not think that the impact is going to be, I don't think it's going to be there, honestly. I know if I come to your house and sit in your pool, I know where I'm going to be looking, and it's not going to be over there. So I think the impact is extremely minimal. Appreciate the question from 1110. And so that's, that question has been answered, and the variance request would not affect them, it seems, in any way. So given all of the facts, I will support the variance as requested. I think history down the road will show that it's the right thing to do, and that all of those lots there will happily have views and be able to sit around their pool and chat with one another, I hope.
Thank you. So thank you, Council, for all your comments, and thank you to all of you for coming out. Truly appreciate you coming out. It gives us a chance to answer some of your questions. I think probably Betty Turco has seen that it's not going to impact her as much as she had worried about, but she came and asked the question, and I think that was really good. It's always good to ask all the questions, to come in and see if we can make some, or come in and just talk about things and let us know your concerns. So I appreciate everybody coming out. Having been in Salmon Arm for a while, I have to tell you, this particular piece of property, developers had looked at it for probably 40 years, wanting to do something there. And when it was able to be developed, it is the most beautiful, probably, spot in all of Salmon Arm. And the people below, who had a whole hillside of trees behind them, suddenly lost a lot of their privacy, and there is a house being built right down there beside their place, and they're trying to be understanding that this is what development is. That's what happens with development. So again, I appreciate everybody coming out, and I will call the question. And so all in favor? Opposed? Councillor Lavery opposed. So thank you. The motion is carried. Administrator?
Your Worship, I have a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that the regular council meeting of July 23rd, 2018 be adjourned.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.